Vaporware is a real thing and a real problem in the ERP software industry. What exactly is Vaporware and what does it mean to you? That's what I want to talk about here today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. And one of the services we provide our clients is helping them select and evaluate the different systems that are available to them in the marketplace. We ultimately will help them evaluate, do a deep dive, and then ultimately select and negotiate with the software vendor that they're going to implement. And one of the things we find during the evaluation process is there's a concept called Vaporware. And Vaporware is essentially this concept where you are shown what technology could look like, but it's not the actual technology. So in other words, it might be something like a PowerPoint slide that is a mocked up screen of what the screen might look like in the future, but it's not the way the software necessarily works yet. And so that's the whole concept of Vaporware, is being sold something that doesn't necessarily exist. It's more of a vision or more of a concept of what could be. And then when you go to buy and implement the software, that functionality isn't necessarily there. So what I want to do today is talk about what this concept of Vaporware is and how you can navigate that risk and ensure that you're finding what functionality is best for you as an organization. Before we dive too far into today's content, I want to share a little bit of information about Third Stage Consulting and who we are. Third Stage Consulting Group is an independent technology agnostic provider of consulting services to help clients through their digital transformations. We help with digital strategy and software selection, as well as implementation planning. And during implementation, we provide services related to program management, organizational change, business process improvement, as well as enterprise architecture. These are just some of the services we provide. We have offices in North America as well as Europe and Asia Pacific. So if you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to check out our resource center, which includes a number of resources that will help you through your digital transformation, and you can access that for free using the QR code here or the links below. You can also reach out to me directly if you'd like to discuss your digital transformation and brainstorm ideas on how to improve where you're headed on your journey. Now let's jump back into today's content. When software vendors are planning for their future of their different products, they create something that's called a product roadmap. And a product roadmap is essentially laying out over the next months and years what sorts of functionality they expect to release within the software. And this is really important because technology is changing so quickly, especially in today's cloud and software as a service environment. Software vendors are constantly adding new features and functions, and oftentimes customers aren't aware of what those features or functions are going to be because they are sort of pushed out through the cloud and through the software as a service environment. And oftentimes organizations aren't even aware that the changes are happening. If you're on social media or Google or Gmail, for example, if you use any of those common consumer-facing tools, you'll notice that sometimes things just change. A screen looks different, or the color scheme changes, or the menu structure changes. And that's a lot like cloud software providers. The technology is constantly changing. And the main thing you want to look at with enterprise technology providers and ERP system providers is their product roadmap. They'll lay out for you what sorts of features and functions they're going to be rolling out. But the problem is when there's a release that's on the short-term horizon or a function that's going to be released on the short-term horizon, oftentimes what software vendors and the sales reps will do is show you what the feature might look like when it's released, but it's not actually baked into the software yet. So if you're a buyer of software today, it might be that there's a certain feature or function that's going to be released in 6 or 12 or 18 months from now, and the software vendor will try to show you what that's going to look like. And this can be confusing to people because they don't know what they're actually buying. They don't know what they're actually getting today when they actually buy the software and presumably go to implement the software in the near-term future. So one of the best ways to start to poke holes in understanding what the Vaporware is that you might be buying or committing to without even knowing it is really asking the tough questions of what's on the product roadmap versus what actually exists today. And having that good understanding of what are you getting today versus what are you going to have to wait for in the future, and what release or how far out in the future might you have to wait for certain features and functions, especially those things that are most critical to your organization. Another Vaporware trap that we see organizations get stuck in when they're evaluating software solutions is they think of functionality as a yes or no assessment. In other words, the feature or function exists or it doesn't. And so when they're evaluating systems, oftentimes the answer you get is yes, this feature exists. But the problem is oftentimes, yes, the feature exists, but the feature isn't very well developed and it's not very mature. It may not be exactly what it is you need within that specific feature or function. So we have to think of functionality and requirements of our business as sort of a continuum. It's not a yes-no answer. It's more of a continuum of how well can a software solution address certain business needs or business requirements. One way to work around this continuum of functionality is when you're seeing demos and you're looking at what the software can do. You want to not just answer yes or no or check a box that yes, the software can do it. You want to assign a quantitative ranking. Even though that quantitative ranking might be somewhat subjective, you can ask your people, your frontline end users and employees, you can ask them to comment on a scale of 1 to 10 or on a scale of 1 to 5, how well does this feature fit what it is we think we need for our organization? And that's a good way to do the comparison, because if you assign one vendor a 5 out of 5 and another vendor a 2 out of 5, you might otherwise say that yes, both vendors can do that function, but the reality is one does it much better than the other. So one of the best ways you can work around this risk of signing up for Vaporware without knowing it is to look at business functionality as a continuum that you assess as part of your evaluation of potential software solutions. When evaluating software solutions, it can be helpful to be somewhat of a healthy skeptic. And what I mean by that is you want to assume that there's holes or gaps in whatever solution is you're evaluating. Not because you want to cast doubt or look for that perfect solution that doesn't exist, but because the perfect solution does not exist. And it's really important that you understand where the gaps are. And those gaps are just as important as the things that the software does well. And the reason for that is because the gaps in the vaporware that you might get from any software acquisition, those are the things that create risks, delays, cost overruns, operational disruptions, that sort of thing during implementation if we don't plan for it. So it's really important that we do a sort of a gap analysis and really identify where the gaps are in whatever software solution we're looking at. So if we look at our end-to-end business processes and we see a demo of a software solution, for example, we're going to want to poke holes in it and find where the gaps are and where the things are that are deficient. It's not a bad thing. You might still buy that software, but you need to understand that so you can plan for a realistic implementation and so that you can manage expectations internally, because what oftentimes happens otherwise is that people expect that the capabilities are there, when in fact, if they had done a gap analysis, an objective gap analysis of the software, they would have known ahead of time that the software doesn't do certain things, and it may have been that the software sales rep demonstrated what is essentially vaporware, something that doesn't yet exist, but it might be on the product roadmap. So you want to manage those expectations, manage the risk, manage the overall project with a clear understanding of what exists and what doesn't yet exist today. So once you've looked at the software vendor's product roadmap and you've identified where the gaps are in the product and you've done the product gap analysis, now you can start to create a roadmap for how you're going to address all this. Let's assume that the software vendors that you've chosen have gaps in their solution. Most of them, if not all of them, do. No big deal. It's not a huge deal, but you just need to know what those gaps are so that now we can create a realistic plan that addresses the fact that we've got these gaps. And now the question becomes, well, what do we do about the gaps? Do we find a third-party bolt-on solution? Do we customize the software? Do we just deal with manual processes to work around it? Do we change our business to fit the software? There's so many different things we can do to address it, but we need to know what's real and what's not in terms of vaporware versus reality before we get too far into the project. And that's where a lot of companies struggle, and that's where a lot of companies have blind spots, is because they don't go through that exercise. So once you've got that clear understanding of where the gaps are and what is real versus what's not, now you can create a realistic digital strategy and a realistic plan that reflects the realities of what it is you're dealing with and potentially what the other solutions are that you're going to put in place to address the gaps that you've identified. So I hope this has given you a sense of what vaporware is and how you can navigate that in your digital transformation. It's an important part of making sure that you're evaluating realistically the software options that are available to you in the marketplace. And if you're looking for more guidance on how to navigate the software selection process, including this concept of vaporware, but not just limited to that, you can also download our software selection guide. It's a free guide we provide on our website. You can download it for free by scanning the QR code right here, or you can go to the links in the description field below. That software selection guide will provide you a methodology and a framework for how you should be going about the software evaluation process, including how to identify where the vaporware might exist and what you're going to do to address that as part of your evaluation and implementation process. So if you found this information useful, and hope you have a great day. And features as a continuum of features and a continuum of assessment is one way. I don't like that. What the risks, forget the and. Okay. Let me just start that over. And the thing with enterprise software,
It's gonna get my head now.
Be existing with the software vendors you're solutioning. Ugh, wow. It's a messy sentence.